Good afternoon and welcome to another 2020 Club Forum hosted by Tennis New South Wales. We're excited to have you here with us today as we focus on competitive play. I'm James Tucker, the Competitions Manager here at Tennis New South Wales, and I'm joined by Nikita.
Hi, I'm Nikita. I'm the Participation Programs Manager here at Tennis New South Wales. I'd first like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we all meet today. Tennis New South Wales and our head offices at Sydney Olympic Park are located on the traditional lands of the Wongal people of the Eora Nation, and we would like to pay our respects to elders past and present.
Thanks, Nikita. So before we get started, we'd like to share a short video for our CEO, Lawrence Robertson.
Hi everybody, and welcome to our 2020 Club Forums. And obviously this year we're coming to you online. We're usually out and about and meeting you in person, and I know many of us are missing that opportunity to do so. But as we all know, it's been a very strange and challenging year due to COVID, and so therefore this year we've chosen to come to you via the World Wide Web. But of course COVID has provided its challenges, but I do want to say thank you on behalf of everybody connected with Tennis New South Wales for the way in which you have adapted and worked hard to get us to this point, and now it seems like we're coming out the other side of it. So the forums, well look, we've lined up some great panel guests. Many of them are club committee members, coach operators, members of councils, all designed to help pass on some of the experiences, tips and tricks that they've found from their clubs, not just in the recent past, but over many years of experience. So please take this opportunity, ask questions, write down everything you possibly can. All of this is designed to help you go back to your clubs and help us grow this great game of ours. So I'll now pass over to the team. Enjoy the forum, and hopefully we'll get a chance to meet you here at the courts sometime very, very soon. Look after yourselves, take care, speak soon.
Thanks, Lawrence. So just a few housekeeping matters to cover off. Firstly, we encourage all participants to send through any questions to our contact details listed on the screen. We also like to take this opportunity to quickly update you on the upcoming AGM and child safeguarding work that we've been doing. The 2020 Tennis New South Wales AGM is going to be held on Tuesday the 24th of November, commencing at 7 p.m. So what's different this year? Due to COVID-19 and the social distancing requirements, our AGM will be conducted as a hybrid meeting. Hybrid AGMs share the characteristics of both a traditional and virtual meeting. A limited number of members will be able to attend in person, with others attending online. We have partnered with Link Market Services to deliver the AGM and worked with them on building the microsite access through to the Tennis New South Wales website. All Tennis New South Wales AGM related information is on this microsite. We encourage members to participate online. Consider hosting your committee meeting on the same night. How is voting conducted this year? The voting will be conducted in person if you are attending the physical venue, otherwise votes are cast online. Voting in person will be as per previous years. Online voting will open on the night. Director elections this year: 1 court operator, 1 Sydney Metro and 2 country delegates. A thorough, fair and transparent interview process was conducted for all nominees. The board could not decide on a preferred in all categories, i.e. the number of candidates being equally suitable. For fairness, the board therefore decided to abstain from voting if any unsigned proxy is given to the chair. Please note, if members appoint a proxy to someone other than the chair, they can either leave open the instruct or their proxy to vote as directed. If you appoint the chair as your proxy, you need to direct your vote for director elections. If you appoint the chair as your proxy and do not direct your vote, it will not count towards the director elections element of the meeting.
We'd also just like to quickly address child safeguarding and our commitment to it. Our vision is that all children and young people are entitled to enjoy tennis in all of its forms in a safe and welcoming environment. We will continue to monitor and educate our clubs on child safety matters. All clubs should have a member protection information officer and an MPIO. Great resources are available on the Play by the Rules website. We are developing a framework to outline Tennis New South Wales' zero tolerance approach, a commitment to improving the child safe culture throughout the tennis family. Tennis New South Wales have confirmed our intention to join the National Redress Scheme. We encourage all clubs to understand and learn more about the scheme. Tennis New South Wales will provide more information after the AGM.
Just before we introduce our special guests, we will hear a brief update from Tennis New South Wales Tournaments Manager, Susan Harris, who will speak to some of the impending updates coming in regards to the 2021 AR calendar. Welcome, Susan.
Thanks, James. Hi everyone, as James said, I'm the Tournaments Manager here at Tennis New South Wales. Firstly, I would just like to give an acknowledgement to all of our clubs, our venues, our affiliates, committees, everyone who has been able to assist us with competitive play opportunities over the last 8 months. In the last 8 months, we've been able to host over 150 opportunities for players at a local level to be able to give them the opportunity to continue to play throughout these difficult and strange COVID times. That equates to about 150 competitive play opportunities throughout New South Wales. That includes the Pro Series, which has been conducted here at Sydney Olympic Park, our New South Wales State Series, which has mainly been in the Sydney metro area, and we are looking to expand that out into regional New South Wales, and over 120 events in our New South Wales Super Series that has been held throughout regional New South Wales. At the completion of term 3 of our Super Series, we conducted a player survey for the Super Series. Overwhelmingly, the feedback was fantastic, and we had lots of positive reinforcement on the level-based play options that we were testing out during this 8-month period. With that being said, we are in the planning stages for the 2021 tennis season, as a lot of you would know. We are well underway with what we're planning for our calendar. Tennis Australia is going to make an announcement in the coming days on what 2021 is possibly going to look like, and that will be communicated hopefully in the next few days. If you are after any further information around tournaments for 2021, you can have a look at the Tennis New South Wales website, or alternatively, you can email Tennis New South Wales Tournaments at tennis.com.au.
And now to introduce our special guests for today. As mentioned, we're focusing on the competitive play review, some Ausplay data, as well as team tennis. So joining us today for the discussion will be Callum Beale, Head of the UTR programs at Tennis Australia, and former professional and Tennis New South Wales Women and Girls lead, Casey Delacqua.
Hey guys.
Hi team.
Hey James.
Hey,
How are you?
Very good. Thanks for joining us. So to start off, I think, Callum, I've got a few questions for you based on the national review that you've been investigating from Tennis Australia. And basically, from the national perspective, what was the rationale for conducting such a review?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll probably speak on behalf of a lot of people on this call where, we appreciate the value of competitive tennis to the tennis economy. And fundamentally have a real passion and desire to make it as vibrant as we can. The real genesis for the national review that's underway was really off the 3 reviews that preceded it, commissioned by Tennis Australia. One was around participation, another one was around performance, and the 3rd review was a digital review. And all 3 of those reviews identified competition tennis as an opportunity. But I think fundamentally, as I said, I think on speaking on behalf of a lot of us, we understand the value of competition to both the individuals, the clubs, the coaches, and the broader tennis economy, and we should be forever reviewing and testing and learning to make sure it is as vibrant as possible. And we are having more casual participants become more engaged with our game through regular competitive experiences.
Yeah, excellent. I do think you do speak on behalf of a lot of people with that review. So moving on with, what would you say as the consistent themes or insights coming out of the data so far?
Yeah, probably everything we anticipated, and I think some of the future directions are partly influenced by COVID. I mean, the very fact that international borders are closed, domestic borders are closed, particularly even more so now with the outbreak in Adelaide. One of the themes continues to be the encouragement of localized competition. Second to that, it is the facilitation as best we can of level-based competition. We do think there is a real opportunity to elevate team competition within the ecosystem. A fourth point that's been a consistent call out is just simplifying the pathways, just to make them really easily understood from players, parents, coaches, and administrators. And the fifth point and the direction forward is more kind of consumer-led format, where rather than the competition deliverer administrator setting a format and having all players kind of conform to one format, the alternative approach is to ask the consumers what type of formats they want to play, whether it's time-based or team-based, and making sure the end consumer has a say in what the type of format looks like. So there's 5 really clear directions around team-based opportunities, as I said, level-based, and localizing competition as much as we can.
Yeah, excellent. And I think to pick out one of those key concepts is around the pathway. And I guess it's something that we have noticed across other sports, but what's the proposed actions that we can take in tennis to make the pathway clearer for aspirational players?
Yeah, I think the review has consistently called out a number of things as it relates to pathways, and the call out has been that the pathways are incredibly complex and different to understand. It is not that pathways don't exist. In fact, a multitude of pathways do exist. Our sport is really rich in pathways, if you like. The challenge really for us is, how do we best communicate to players and parents in particular what pathway is most suitable for that individual, and what is the supporting education that aligns to that pathway. So I think it's really for us a matter of the sport is just almost better organising our competitive opportunities, just to make sure it is really consumable. So one of the immediate call outs is to provide some supportive education to players and parents and coaches around what are the most suitable pathways for different player segments, if you like. So another opportunity for us is to make sure that competition tennis is really integrated and holistic. We typically refer to competition as either tournament play or club competition or potentially school competition. The word competition should be an umbrella term. Everything should feed into that. And underneath it, that broad umbrella or parent term, we just need to better organise potentially the opportunities that are available and really make it well known to all of the different player segments which ones are most suitable for them.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, absolutely spot on, Callum. Casey, over to you quickly. The Ozplay data that's recently come out has shown that there's been an increase in tennis participation, but that there still seems to be that gap between male and female participation within our sport. Do you have any thoughts in terms of what we could be doing as a sport to try to close that gap between male and female participation, in particular in a competitive landscape?
Yeah, well, I feel like it's certainly what a lot of sports are dealing with, but I think specifically in tennis, I feel that we need to potentially look at some of our formats or the way that we do go about our competition landscape to not only engage these young girls into tennis, but also retain them. And that, I think, having an idea for these players, these young females, to come into our sport, and Callum was talking a lot about pathways, but I think it's really important for these young females that come into our sport to kind of feel like they have a pathway on and off the court as well, particularly if they're really, really passionate about our sport, which I know that there are a lot of young girls out there that are, but sometimes I feel like that aspirational player is always there, but we need to keep them just in our sport as a whole. So I think that the key things that I've been part of the competitive review, and I feel like a lot of the things that have come up from myself in my own task in the review was the fact that young girls coming through, the key words are fun, social, and having like fun in a team environment. So perhaps looking at our formats in that sense and really getting the girls just being around their friends and having fun. And then when they get to a certain age, feeling like they have an avenue to go towards. And, you know, obviously we're like we've got Future Leaders and we've got Shiro. So programs like that to keep our girls involved in our sport. And then, you know, even if it's from a volunteer perspective, really engaging them in our local community, I think is really, really important. So I think there's definitely a lot to look at, and particularly around the fun and friends and stuff for the young girls, I think is a really important thing.
Absolutely. And I know Tennis Australia has obviously got a lot of investment in terms of the females in tennis programming, and there is going to be a lot of things happening across all levels of our sport, whether it's competitions, tournaments, community leadership, grassroots participation in that space to try to close that gap. And I think that it'll definitely benefit the competitive area if we can just retain more women. So, Case, I know that we've had a lot of conversations, you know, so fortunate to be working with you, you know, in our office here. And we've had a lot of conversations about the importance of club competitions and in developing players. I wondered if you could just touch on your experience growing up as a junior and coming through a sort of landscape where you were quite involved in local club competition.
Yeah, absolutely. So reflecting on my career now, having retired, I think when I think about my career, my most memorable and my most influential kind of moments throughout my career happened in team tennis. And that started all the way back in Perth at my local club, where I was engaged in club comp from a junior perspective. But because I was obviously doing slightly better, I was always playing the older girls in a kind of senior level competition. So I was always heavily involved in team competition. And I think, and I like to stress the benefit of team competition. I think what the biggest thing is that you're always playing for something more than yourself. And I think, yes, tennis is an individual sport, and I definitely had that throughout my career. But when I really think about it, it's the team comps that really influenced, and the people that I was around that really helped my career. So whether that be club comp, and then I went into representing WA at state team events, and that was highly important in terms of representing, again, something bigger than myself. Playing doubles as well was a massive part of my career. So combining all of that, then moving into professional, I had a lot of success in doubles with Ash, obviously, but then also Fed Cup. It was a priority for me, and I loved representing my country. So, yeah, I don't remember a lot of sometimes the individual tournaments I played, but really my most memorable moments came through team competition. And that's why I'm a big advocate for team tennis. I think it's a really important part of our sport from a performance, but also from a participation side. So, yeah, team tennis is something that I really stress that I think is a big important part of a player's journey.
That's really good, Case. And hearing your story and your background, it definitely relates a lot to what we're trying to do here in our space. But jumping back to Callum, we've got a question for you. So what role does the UTR play in the future of tournaments and competitions?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. You know, the UTR really came to life courtesy of the pandemic, if you like, domestically, obviously, with domestic borders closed and the inability for players to travel across borders. You know, we as Tennis Australia needed a solution. The way the UTR rating is derived, you know, every match kind of counts from a local level, you know, through to an international level. So the UTR provided us as Tennis Australia a vehicle to keep making competition relevant amongst some of the various lockdowns that happen with the pandemic. You know, for us, I think rankings and ratings as a sport, when you look at it from an international perspective, will always coexist. The ITF Juniors, the ATP, the WTA, you know, those ranking systems aren't going anywhere. I think for us domestically, we need to be really clear on what is the fundamental difference between a ranking and rating, what type of behaviours are we trying to drive, and we have seen some really positive both player improvements, both on and off the court as it relates to the UTR, because it factors in a variable, two important variables. One is around who you're playing and the quality of your opponent, and second to that, what the actual score was. So we're slowly moving away from it only being the win or loss that matters, but instead making sure you find people of a similar standard to compete against, and second to that, making sure the match is competitive and every game counts. So I think, as Susan said in the introduction, we've seen some really positive outcomes as a result of the UTR. And what we've got to work through over the next couple of years domestically is what ranking and rating system applies for which specific audience, because they do serve different purposes, and we just need to be clear in defining what are the influencing variables for them and who are they most appropriate for.
Yeah, really good.
Absolutely. Case, I know that you have been playing in our NG Premier League here in Sydney. I just wondered if you might give us a little bit of an insight into your experience playing, and obviously that's also utilising UTR as well, but just love to hear a bit about your experience in our competition.
Yeah, well, obviously I've been working in the offices at Tennis New South Wales, so I sit closely to Tux, who has done a great job getting the Premier League up and running. And I think it's really important in New South Wales to get that high elite level of team competition back up, because I think it's something that the players should really want to engage in. You just can't you can spend as much time you want on a practice court, but nothing beats getting out there and playing matches. So it's been great to see a lot of our top players out there playing. I had the opportunity last week to play against Alex Bozovic, so that was tough for me, having not played for a couple of years. But it was a great atmosphere. It was a really good experience. I was out there with new girls that I hadn't actually met before. I only signed up for doubles, but so that was enough for me at this point. But I just felt having the other clubs there, the other teams, all competing against each other. I thought the format was really good. It was lots of fun. So yeah, hats off to Tux for getting that up and running. And I really hope that it can really get some momentum and we can really start to grow that team competition here in New South Wales over the years. I think that will be really beneficial.
That's awesome, Case. And I think, what an amazing experience for a lot of those players, particularly the sort of up-and-coming players who have engaged in that comp. At having someone like you, taking the court alongside them, I think that's really awesome. So
yeah,
thank you for getting out there.
Oh, no problem. And I think one thing to note is that whole I learned from all of my older peers growing up, and I think when you it's a really important thing to give back. And I think me just being out there, if that can help a few of our younger athletes find their way, whether that be on or off the court, then I'm all for that, because I had the same for me growing up. I had these older players that played very tricky, that taught me not only how to play in a competitive environment, but also how to behave and also how to shake hands at the end of the match and say congratulations. And I think those type of things are really important. So yeah, it was a really great experience.
Yeah, awesome. And thanks very much for the shout out, Case. How do you think you'll go in the semis? Do you think you're going to take it out?
Yeah, I've been messaging our team, and we've got our team up and running for this weekend. So shout out to the Sydney Uni girls. But yeah, I thrive in that environment. I thrive just being on a messenger and having my teammates text about the competition. I think that's what tennis is about. So yeah, good luck for the final series, Tux.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Okay, moving back to Callum, another question around UTR and how do you see the ratings play in the tennis landscape in the future? Do you think this will help grow the strength of players across the state?
Yeah, I think some of the particular call-outs from the reviewers, how do we create more opportunities for level-based play? So I think fundamentally what the rating should do is give us a better indicator of player standard. And once we know player standard kind of at scale, that's really reliable, we would be able to allow consumers to find someone of a similar standard, and as administrators, be able to orchestrate competitive events that are more, I would say, level-based. And we know level-based is important for two things. One is player retention. It is well evidenced now that people playing socially or competitively against someone of their standard will likely retain them in the sport. And as Casey alluded to, the more we can create an environment where the best players are playing the best players, or simply players of a similar standard playing each other regularly, there is a specific connection to that, to player development. So ratings will play a really important part moving forward. Yeah, as I said, there are a multitude of rankings and rating systems that exist in the market currently, from the Australian rating to the Australian ranking system, the UTR, the ITF, and so forth. And the ITF are bringing out a world tennis number next year, which is designed to serve a similar purpose to that of the UTR. So I think 2021, for us domestically, will be, trying to sift through the various ranking and rating systems that are available, make sure we communicate how each of those ratings and ranking systems are derived, who they're most suitable for. And ideally, we get to a point where we can have one single rating system that determines a player's standard and standing. There'll be a little bit of work to sift through, but we see the rating in particular as a great vehicle to create more level-based opportunities. And, it's our commitment through the review to make sure we make that as simple as possible. I'm not sure we need the multitude of systems that are currently in place, but we must find the vehicles that allow more matches to count and create more level-based experiences, because we know the benefits of that.
Yeah, really good. And I think to add to that, you touched on it, that the education of how the rating works and how what it means to players is going to be key in that as well.
Yeah, look, I think it's a pretty fast-moving environment, the whole rankings and rating systems, even more so off the back of the pandemic, where we've got Australian ranking events paused, if you like. The ITF and WTA and ATP have got their various provisions around rankings. It's moving really quickly, and we've just got a responsibility to players, parents, coaches, and clubs to make sure they're abreast of all the information, and to make sure they apply the ranking and rating system that is most suitable to the participation segment they're trying to serve. So you can expect through 2021 some really clear communication about the best path forward.
Yeah, excellent.
Case, we've had another question come through for you. I think you mentioned earlier when we were talking about off-court pathways and the importance of those pathways for, I think particularly young girls is what we were talking about earlier. The question is, what's an example of a pathway off the court, or how can people engage in those pathways?
Yeah, so I'm really passionate about this space, because it's amazing, since I started even at Tennis New South Wales, how many young females that I've spoken to that are passionate about the game and want to stay involved in the game, but that may be playing competitively, but it might also be off the court as well. And I think it's really important that we encourage and nurture a pathway for those young females. So I think it starts with probably future leaders, where the young athletes can get engaged in a program that you've had so much to do with, Keats, and I've had lucky enough to work alongside you and see the work that you put into that. That's starting up soon. I know you've had a huge number of applicants, and we've had a high number of female young athletes, 50% to be correct. So I know that, congratulations to you for that, because that is huge. Yeah. And I think that's the first step for our young athletes to get a high level of education off the court. Then we can put them into Sheroes, which I think is an awesome program, which I'm involved with obviously as well. And that's obviously more a volunteer-driven program, but so we would love to see a lot of our females in volunteer roles within their community, but also in that Sheroes providing a lot of education. And we've got some exciting announcements coming with Sheroes, but getting more women on, say, club committees, getting more women in leadership roles particularly, and really being able to grab these young females and get them into these programs here at Tennis New South Wales and give them that type of education so that they have the confidence to, walk into a club and take on roles. And also there's the facility intern management that we've got at Tennis New South Wales as well, that I would encourage a lot of our females to apply for. So I think there's some really great opportunities, and I think that's kind of a pathway that can be set for a young female off the court.
I think you're totally spot on in terms of it's so important to have that additional education outside of just being focused on being a player. And if you can sort of set your mind outside of just that on-court stuff, sometimes it actually, supports your performance when you're playing as well. So really appreciate all the work you're doing in that space, Case. You've been amazing.
Oh no, I've loved it. It's been great.
No, it's really good, and as Keith said, to highlight all the different options that can happen after a playing career, it's really good to highlight that, not just within tennis, but within sport in general. But yeah, look, Casey, we've got another question for you. We've got a few Casey fans here. So what are the benefits of team tennis, and why would a player choose this format over tournaments, for example?
Well, I mean, as you can tell, I'm a big advocate for team tennis, and I think there's so many things in terms of, I guess, the values that you want to, when you become a professional player, that I think are really important, but also in terms of your game. I think playing a blend of team tennis and then obviously tournaments. It is an individual sport, so there's no doubt tournaments play a massive part in becoming a player. And I think that that's what I loved as well, the challenge of being out there and playing a tournament. So there's no doubt playing a blend is probably the perfect match. I think for younger athletes to engage in a lot of team tennis is extremely important. I just think the benefits of team tennis come with, like I said before, so you're playing for something bigger than yourself. You're playing with teammates. You have to learn how to communicate. You have to learn how to kind of give and take. And it's not always about you. And I just think that's a really important, I think when you're coming through. The other thing is when you become, or if you have an aspiration to become a professional player or just focus on that, you have a team around you always anyway. The word team will follow you throughout your career, even as an individual player. So I think it's just a really important focus when you're playing team tennis.
Callum, I know you grew up in Adelaide or in South Australia. Was your experience similar to Casey's in terms of coming through that sort of team tennis pathway and you know, competition tennis and club tennis being really important?
Yeah, absolutely. I reflect on, I certainly didn't reach the heights of Casey, but I always remember club competition and team competition being a constant. And yeah, we would travel interstate for tournaments or overseas, but whenever we'd come back, there was always an opportunity to compete locally for your club. And as Casey said, I think a lot of us tennis players reflect on our time in tennis and the memories that stick out of those that were part of a team. But certainly in South Australia, we had and have a really strong club competition culture, and you see a lot of players retained in the sport for life because of that. So we need to make sure that club and team competition is a real focal point of the landscape moving forward. Because as Casey said, I think there's enormous upside beyond what happens on the court with friendship and support and life beyond just the competition itself. So my reflections on it were very similar to that of Casey's. Unfortunately, it didn't propel me to the trajectory that Casey went.
Right, you did all right.
But regardless, it was just a great, wholesome, healthy environment. Yeah, as I said, when you reflect on your time in tennis, they tend to be the memories that spring to mind first.
Yeah, well, I still remember you in the futures, Callum, while I was struggling to even get in the qualifying. So you did okay, mate. Look, adding on to that, I guess a question coming from Barb from Laguna Tennis. So how will UTR work for juniors at grassroots level and that are only starting their tournament or competition journey? So how do they get that initial rating that they're to start their journey?
Yeah, that's a piece we're working on. It's a really good question, and I guess if you look at the journey the UTR as a company has taken, they really went from a top-down approach whereby they position themselves as a rating system for particularly tournament players, even more so for players who have or are competing in tournaments with great regularity. So they are the currency for US college tennis, if you like. So we're working on a part with the UTR now whereby all of the sanctioned tournament information that is played gets sent across to them. Second to that, we are working on a system where club competition is also migrated to the UTR, so that largely every match counts. The third piece, and related to the question, is what does that mean for juniors? We're particularly mindful of not trying to cause a rating or a ranking addiction, if you like, for really young players. So my sense would be that younger players, particularly starting the sport, will have a really generalized rating. They need to roughly know where they stand and how to find players of similar standards. And as players progressively get older, their rating would become more detailed. We're pretty clear with the review that we want to avoid a situation where players and parents are only involved in competition to try and improve their ranking or rating. There are infinite benefits beyond that for players. So we're mindful with the UTR or any rating system, if you like, of being too prescribed and too prescriptive for younger players. We do think, however, a generalised rating is necessary so players understand what their relative playing standard is and how to find people of a similar level. But when I think about the evolution of the UTR and where they started, and again, it was a bit of a top-down approach. It's a piece of work that we're working on with them to make sure that every player who's playing competitively can have a rating. But as you get older, the value of that rating and how it's presented will be different.
We've got another question from Kim, which I think sort of builds on what you're talking about there, Callum. What are your thoughts on local club comps compared to TA tournaments, Australian ranking tournaments, and what age and level should a player compete in either?
Yeah, I think I might answer the second question first, and it's really difficult for me to comment on that. I think there's so many variables that prepare someone to be ready for tournament play. We know it's a different environment. It's person versus person. You're out there without the support of your parents and your coaches and so forth. And I think there's many factors that go into the readiness of someone to play tournaments. And I think it is an individual sport, and I think it really needs to be a decision that's driven by the coach and parent as to what is the right time and is it the right environment for that particular individual. But I think, as Casey said, I think there's a blend and there's an introduction, obviously, coming out of hot shots. At 10, 11, and 12 is when a lot of the players are starting to compete in the sanctioned tournament play. And you might have to remind me of the first question. Sorry, Nikita.
What are your thoughts on the local club comps compared to Tennis Australia tournament?
I think do you see there being a point in time where we get to a stage where there's, you have to have a certain rating to be able to get into an Australian ranking tournament, and in the interim you're building up your experience in, local club competition or local events? I think that might be the...
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think fundamentally it really depends on which player segment we're speaking to. For a majority of the junior players, I think club competition and tournament competition need to coexist. What we need to do a better job of is making sure those two opportunities don't conflict, if you like. But one thing is really clear, particularly when speaking from a player development perspective, is what matters are the matches, less so whether it's in a tournament or less so whether it's in a club or team competition. Is the match competitive? Is it played in a fair spirit? And, is there the frequency of matches that players need to play across a year to make sure they're developing appropriately? But I would like to see a shift in the focus being on the quality of the experience and the quality of the match, less so when and how it's played. But we do know tournaments and club competition provide different experiences for different segments. But the reality is, particularly for the emerging juniors, there is a place for both. We just need to be able to better define when those experiences occur so that players aren't faced with having to choose a tournament versus, a vibrant club competition.
Yeah, really good. And I think you touched on it before with the pathway and how many different players have had different journeys to get to where they are. So it's about coexisting and making sure it's clear and easy for people to transfer between them both, right?
Yeah, that's right. And Casey did, as part of the competitive review, a lot of interviews with past players. So we've got a really good sense for what some of the themes were from their trajectories. But, all went through a period of time and arguably for a large part of their careers of playing both your traditional tournament structure, whilst that being complemented or supported by club competition or a version of team competition. So, but both have their benefits, both have their value. We've just got to be really clear to all players, parents, coaches, when they happen. And as I said, to avoid players needing to make a choice between one or the other.
Yeah, really good. Case, back to you. You touched on young females before and women and girls in tennis. So what's your ideas on how you would get young females to get involved in team tennis? for the first time? What would bring them to the team?
Well, I think both Keats and Tux can probably help me answer this question with the New South Wales landscape as it is. But I think engaging with your local community and your local club coach or operator and see what they provide and talk to them about what type of team comps. Obviously, there's a big space that I feel we can start in doing some stuff with girls only, perhaps team tennis. There's lots of thoughts around that. But I think initially engaging in with your local club and finding out the right avenue to go to speak to get involved in some type of team competition.
Kate, anything to add?
Thanks, yours.
Oh, yeah.
There's a question that's come through for Callum, and I think maybe Tux probably can help touch on this one a little bit as well. But how does the Sydney Tennis Review relate to the outcomes of the National Competitions Review? Have they interacted?
Yeah, so to provide a little bit of context, Callum, as you know, we've performed our own review that's probably about 2 to 3 years down the track now, and probably identifying a lot of similarities between the national review. So interested to see how that's related to your findings at the national level.
Yeah, the only comment I'd make, I think Tennis Queensland were doing a review, Tennis New South Wales were doing a review, and then TA. What I would suggest is the competition space is we should forever be reviewing. Put labeling it as there's a review underway probably signifies it being, having a clear endpoint. I think we're always looking to grow and evolve and bring in the right people to make sure that the competitive opportunities we're offering are what the consumers are looking for. So the challenge with a national review is you run the risk of offering some really generalized statements, but what is clear is that the findings and any recommendations need to be contextualized to each local environment. As I said, one of the call outs was encouraging localized competition, and no one knows their local environments better than the coaches and clubs and the member associations. We hope as Tennis Australia to be able to apply some, some systems leadership, if you like, and to make sure we are forever engaging with the customer to make sure what we provide is meeting their needs. But James, as you suggested, there is an enormous similarity based on what I've seen with the New South Wales review and the TA one. And I think most importantly, despite it being a Tennis Australia review, the consistent call out is again the importance of contextualizing it to each geographical area, and to make sure the nuances around the country are really well reflected in any recommendations.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Definitely the geography of our country doesn't always provide clarity when you're looking at a metro size, the size of Sydney, and comparing that to other metro cities around Australia. It's not a one size fits all approach. So it's a big piece of work.
Casey, not a Casey fan. Casey, will you be back out on court next year? I'm not sure if they're referring to the AO or if you're going to join us back at Premier League next year. But I know you're out on court playing. Are you still doing some coaching as well and things like that?
Yeah, I think, it's a good question in a sense that I have retired now, but tennis has been such a big part of my life that I could never see myself not being involved in the sport. I've spent the last couple of years really trying some different things outside of being a professional player to see where my passions are in the sport. So, I grew up playing in Perth. I grew up with my nan and my mum playing down at the local tennis club. And so the thoughts of not having tennis is just not there. I think I am doing my high performance coaching course at the moment. So that's a piece of work that I've wanted to do. So I am completing that. And I do like to get out on court every now and then and have a touch point with some of the younger athletes and help them out where possible. In terms of playing, I would love to be back playing at the NG Premier League next year. I think that's where my peak will be, and probably only in doubles on half the court. But that's okay. I still enjoy competing. I still like being out there. I still love the game. So, and I hope that that's an example of what I speak about when I work at Tennis New South Wales and in my role, that when I speak about these women getting involved in sport, I'm just like them in a sense that I love the game and there are opportunities. So let's kind of help them and find their passion and give them a pathway to stay in our wonderful sport.
That's excellent. I'll definitely be looking for your entry next year, don't worry. Callum, back to you. With the national review, and as we've touched on, so we've spoken a bit about it, but what for you is the next steps for the national review?
Yeah, so where we're up to, we've really just finished this, what we've called as a discovery phase, which we looked at. We looked at academic research, we looked at all of the reviews that have come before us, and we also did a survey that went out to about 90,000 people connected to competition tennis, both players and parents. So what we've spent the past few weeks doing is just synthesizing all of the information that is really out there and in place. And as we know, it's really quite complex. There's 100 years of history we're dealing with. There's over 250 governing associations of competition tennis. There's over 2,000 different formats. There's 100 naming conventions, and there's 5,000 plus people delivering competitions. So one thing we're really aware of is the complexity of what we're trying to do. The next phase is really for us to start to begin to share some of the findings, which are really those principles that I outlined at the start of the discussion today. And from there, we will look at a series of recommendations that we as a sport should consider. But with that in mind, and I spoke just briefly there about the complexity of it, I don't think there will be a point in time which signifies the end of the review and all the recommendations are accepted overnight. It will be a really phased and methodical process that we will go through, and we've just got to forever make sure that any recommendations meet the needs of what the end consumer, that being the players, are asking for. And through to the end of the year, we're really going to commit to communicating some of the findings, and any recommendations that are put forward, will not occur overnight. In fact, they'll be really methodically phased over the coming years.
We've got a question coming from Joe at Brennan Park Tennis Centre. He's asking about the UTR and the ability for players to be able to check their rating for their age and across the state, where they sit in the state and where they sit nationally. Is that something that they're able to do? Did that make sense the way I explained it?
Yes, and it's a complication for us as administrators. The value proposition of the UTR is that it is one rating system regardless of age and regardless of gender. So everyone appears on one rating system. To then filter, if you like, by birth year is actually against the proposition. They're largely saying this is a rating system that is based on your playing standard, not on your age, not on your gender. So it runs slightly counter, if you like, to the proposition of the UTR. We know as administrators there is a need for us to have that filter. So given our partnership with the UTR, we are working with them on that as a feature. And obviously, we're going to have to walk a fine line with the UTR on how we do that. As I said, that their proposition is it's one rating system for all. But we are pushing, if you like, to have a filter specifically related to that question, which allows you to identify players of a particular birth year. And that is in the pipeline for the UTR's product team, and I suspect we'll see more about that over the coming weeks or early into 2021.
And I'd imagine you have to do a similar thing in terms of by location as well. You're going to use it for
Yeah, I think there's a multitude of features and options that'll be passed down from the UTR over the coming 3 to 4 months. And again, I think the sentiment of what they're trying to do is right. It is, it is all around the notion of local level-based play. The complication really comes to us and potentially from the individual who asked the question. As administrators, we're looking for more filters and functions that can make it easier for us to design, suitable events.
Yeah, really cool. And second part to that question is to Casey. So what are your thoughts around a mixed Premier League? Do you think this would be more beneficial in relation to competition standard, and should we have a minimum age limit allowed to compete?
Well, I think this is, I guess, potentially where UTR could play a big part of in terms of level-based play. So in terms of having a mixed Premier League event, it could definitely work if you're playing if you have level-based play. I think there is a sense of atmosphere when you kind of mix the genders and you all get out there and you're all there for one thing, and that's to compete and to play. I think that's great. Highlight of my career was winning the mixed doubles at the French Open, and I think it's a real standout in terms of all my years playing against obviously some of the boys, and then also mixing with them. I think, yeah, I don't think there's any need. I think there's definitely room for that, and something to look into in regards to formats potentially.
I wonder if the question was in relation to mixed teams or actually, you know, a team full of men. I think in a Premier League situation that could be challenging in terms of, I would assume that...
Challenging, but nothing's off the table if we do it right.
Yeah, I think a Premier League situation would be great to have 2 men and 2 women, and then obviously competing against the same gender, but then maybe coming together for a mixed doubles. I think a format like that would probably be more suited to a Premier League kind of. And in terms of the age limit, I think that's just based on UTR, or it's a level-based play. If there's a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old, I know in Perth growing up, I used to play against a lot of the older girls, but the level was there. So I think it all comes down to level-based play in that regard.
Really good. Okay, so Case, last question for you. Can tennis ever be the ¡1 sport in Australia?
Are we talking, I guess, from a participation perspective here? I'm assuming so.
I would assume so.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we're competing against a multitude of sports now compared to what we are used to. And I think when you talk specifically females, there's so many options now for young females to choose from in terms of sports. But I really feel like, yeah, if tennis, we can do a great job of feeling like you want to go down to your local club on the weekend and spend your days down there. And like me, I want to take my kids down to the local club and really set up our sport as a sport for life. I think that's going to really help tennis become on that trajectory up to closer to #1. I think it'd be pretty tough with what we compete against, but I definitely obviously all for tennis and hope that it could. But yeah, I definitely think it could.
Alan, did you want to take on that question, or is there any other comments that you want to leave us with before we wrap up today's session?
No, I think, you know, some of the features of our sport have really been showcased over the past 6 months. You know, we're outdoors, we bring people together, but in a socially distant manner, if you like, so that the numbers through casual court bookings and people going to clubs and so forth are the highest they've been in many times. I think we've got a real opportunity as a sport to capitalise on this. But I think, you know, our sport and potentially, again, speaking on behalf of everyone, you know, the more people we can get to pick up a racket and play, they will understand the value of our sport and the joy it brings just being associated with it. So I don't have an exact answer, but I know we should keep trying because, yeah, as Casey said, it's a sport for life and it offers a lot more than just what happens on the court, and our sport should celebrate that.
Fantastic. Thanks again, guys, for joining us. That'll conclude our Q&A for today, but appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, guys.
No problem.
So thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. I hope you got some good information out of that.
If you head to the Tennis New South Wales website, there will be recordings of not just this session, but all of the other club forums that have already taken place. There's also some great resources and some information about the work that we're doing on there. So head over to the website and check it all out. And yeah, we hope to see you all soon.
Thanks again.
Thanks.